The year is 2742. Across the vast, star-dusted canvas of the galaxy, a new power has emerged, casting a long, chilling shadow. The Xylosian hegemony. They were not just conquerors, they were purifiers. They believed in a singular, immutable truth. History belonged only to the strong, to those who could claim dominion without question. And humanity, to the Xylosians, was a stain, a fleeting, insignificant blip on the grand cosmic timeline ripe for erasure. For centuries, humanity had ventured forth from Earth, not with weapons blazing, but with curiosity in their hearts and a yearning for understanding. They built bridges, not walls, with the myriad sentient species they encountered. They shared knowledge, celebrated diversity, and formed a loose, vibrant confederation of planets known as the Stellar Accord. But the Xylosians saw this as weakness, a pathetic attempt to cling to relevance. They swept through the galaxy with an almost surgical precision, their fleets appearing as gleaming obsidian leviathans against the velvet black of space. World after world fell, not just to their overwhelming firepower, but to their insidious doctrine, assimilation or annihilation. And with each conquest, they didn't just subjugate, they scrubbed. They meticulously purged all records, all monuments, all cultural artifacts of the conquered civilizations. History, they decreed, would be written by the Xylosians alone. When their gaze finally turned to the Sol system, there was a collective shiver of dread that rippled through the Stellar Accord. Humanity, though resilient and resourceful, had never been considered a military powerhouse on the galactic stage. Their strength lay in their adaptability, their compassion, their unyielding spirit. But against the cold, unfeeling might of the Xylosian war machine, many believed those very traits would be their undoing. The Xylosians themselves certainly thought so. Their initial intelligence assessments of humanity were dismissive, almost contemptuous. Primitive emotional creatures, their leading strategist, Commander Vorlag, had sneered. Their technology is adequate, but their reliance on hope and empathy will be their ultimate weakness. Vorlag, a creature of stark angles and shimmering crystalline scales, stood on the bridge of the Harbinger of Truth, his flagship. The massive vessel, a testament to Xylosian engineering, hung like a predatory bird above the pale blue marble of Earth. Through the viewport, he could see the intricate web of lights that marked human cities, tiny, fragile beacons in the night. "They call this planet Earth," Vorlag intoned, his voice a low, resonant hum that echoed through the silent bridge. "A quaint designation for a world that will soon be nothing more than a historical footnote, if that." His subordinate, a smaller, more agile Xylosian named Kael, shifted uncomfortably. Kael had reviewed the human historical archives before the Xylosian censors had deemed them irrelevant. He'd seen the art, the music, the stories of triumph and tragedy. He'd even found a peculiar fascination in their concept of love. But such thoughts were dangerous in the hegemony. "Commander," Kyle began, his voice carefully neutral, "our simulations indicate a projected resistance of approximately 3.7 standard cycles. Their orbital defenses are robust but finite," Vorlag scoffed, a dry, rattling sound. "Simulations are for the timid, Kyle. We are the architects of a new galactic order. We do not simulate. We execute. Prepare the orbital bombardment protocols. Target their major population centers first. A swift, decisive blow to break their will." He paused, a cruel glint in his multifaceted eyes. "And ensure that every historical archive, every monument, every scrap of their culture is utterly vaporized. Let them know what it means to be forgotten." On Earth, the news of the Xylosian arrival had spread like wildfire, igniting both fear and a defiant resolve. General Anya Sharma, a woman whose graying temples belied the fire in her spirit, stood before a holographic display in the deeply buried command center beneath the Rocky Mountains. Her face, etched with the weariness of too many sleepless nights, was resolute. Around her, a dozen of humanity's finest strategists and engineers worked with a feverish intensity. "Status report, Colonel Davies," Anya commanded, her voice calm despite the storm brewing outside. Colonel Ben Davies, a man with a steady gaze and a distinguished career in deep space reconnaissance, tapped a few controls. The holographic display zoomed in on the Zalosian fleet, a truly terrifying armada. "General, their main fleet is holding position above Earth. They've deployed several smaller reconnaissance vessels, probing our defenses. We've managed to cripple two, but they barely registered it." Anya nodded slowly. "They have numbers. They have superior firepower, and they have a chilling confidence that comes from centuries of unchallenged conquest. But what they don't have, Colonel," she said, her eyes meeting his, "is a full understanding of what it means to be human. They certainly don't understand our stubbornness." "General," Davies replied, a faint, grim smile touching his lips, "or our ability to pull a rabbit out of a hat when the chips are down." "Indeed," Anya said, her gaze returning to the daunting image of the Zylosian fleet. "Initiate Project Echo. It's time to remind them that even if they erase our history from their records, Earth itself remembers." Project Echo was humanity's desperate, audacious gamble. For decades, long before the Zalosian threat had even been a whisper on the wind, humanity had begun to experiment with advanced forms of planetary data storage. Not in servers or quantum drives, but in the very geological and atmospheric structures of Earth itself. They had developed a method to encode vast amounts of information: history, art, science, philosophy, the very essence of human experience, into the planet's seismic vibrations, its magnetic field, even the complex chemical signatures within its deepest oceans. It was a fail-safe, a last resort, a message in a bottle cast into the cosmic ocean, meant to outlast any destructive force. If humanity fell, Earth would become a living archive, a silent testament to a civilization that refused to be truly forgotten. The Zylosians, in their arrogance, had never considered such a possibility. Their methods of historical eradication were always external: bombardments, data wipes, the systematic destruction of physical records. The idea of a planet itself holding memory was beyond their scope of understanding, beyond their cold, rational logic. To them, a planet was a resource, a territory, a strategic point, not a living, breathing entity with a story to tell. As the first waves of Zylosian energy weapons lanced down towards Earth, turning swaths of land into incandescent craters, a strange, low hum began to emanate from the planet's core. It wasn't an audible sound, but a vibration, a frequency that permeated the very fabric of existence. It was Project Echo activating, a planetary cryogenic system for humanity's soul. The Zylosians detected the energy signature, but dismissed it as a localized geological anomaly, perhaps a result of their own bombardment. They were too focused on the satisfying sight of cities crumbling, of human resistance faltering. Vorlag watched with a grim satisfaction as the orbital bombardments continued. "Their defiance is commendable in a primitive sort of way," he mused, "but utterly futile. Their Project Echo, as their intercepted communications call it, is merely a pathetic attempt to distract from their inevitable demise. A minor energy spike, nothing more." He turned to Kale. "Begin the atmospheric cleansing protocols. We will strip this world of anything that resembles life, then reseed it with Zylosian flora and fauna. A new beginning built on a cleansed canvas." But as the days turned into weeks and the orbital bombardments continued, strange things began to happen. Zylosian reconnaissance drones, sent to survey the supposedly cleansed surface, began to malfunction. Their sensors, designed to detect only Zylosian-approved biological signatures, started picking up anomalous readings. Ghosts in the machine. Images, sounds, fragmented data that made no logical sense. A faint melancholic melody suddenly overwhelming the drone's audio receptors. A flash of a human face smiling across its visual feed. A snippet of ancient poetry, overriding its navigation system. "Commander, we're encountering unexpected anomalies," a Zylosian technician reported, his crystalline forehead furrowed in confusion. "Drone units are reporting sensory overload and data corruption. We believe it might be some form of electromagnetic interference from the planet's core," Vorlag scoffed. "Electromagnetic interference? From a dying planet? Nonsense. It's their pathetic attempts at psychological warfare. They're trying to project fear. Disregard and continue the cleansing." Yet the anomalies persisted and even escalated. On one recon mission, a Xylosian scout ship flew over what was once a sprawling human city. Its sensors registered only barren, scorched earth. But suddenly, the ship's internal holographic projector flickered to life, unbidden, displaying a vibrant image of the city as it once was. Bustling streets, towering structures, parks filled with laughing children. The Xylosian crew recoiled, their rational minds struggling to process the impossible. Then, just as suddenly, the image vanished, leaving only the stark reality of destruction. The pilot, a veteran of countless campaigns, found his hands trembling on the controls. It was as if the planet itself was crying out, a silent scream of defiance. This was humanity's true weapon. Not the ships they launched, not the weapons they fired, but the very essence of their being, imprinted on their home world. Project Echo wasn't a broadcast. It was a resonance. It wasn't trying to communicate with the Xylosians directly. It was simply being. And in its being, in its silent, planetary memory, it began to subtly, insidiously affect the Xylosian technology, designed as it was for cold, logical processing. The raw, unfiltered emotion, the sheer volume of human experience embedded in Earth's fabric, was anathema to their highly ordered systems. It was like trying to contain a raging river in a delicate glass. Vorlog refused to acknowledge the growing unease among his crew. He attributed it to human psychological contamination, a weakness he believed his Xylosian soldiers were immune to. "They are trying to unnerve us, to sow discord," he declared to his officers. "Do not fall prey to their pathetic attempts at emotional manipulation. We are Xylosian. We are logic. We are order." But even Vorlog, in the quiet solitude of his command chamber, found himself experiencing inexplicable phenomena. He would close his eyes and see flashes of alien landscapes, vibrant and full of life, not the sterile, angular beauty of his home world. He would hear snippets of melody, hauntingly beautiful, that resonated with something deep within him, something he had long suppressed. He attributed it to fatigue, to the strain of command. But deep down, a tiny, unsettling seed of doubt began to sprout. The Xylosians had tried to erase humanity from history. They had scorched the earth, destroyed the records, silenced the voices. But they had forgotten one crucial, irreducible fact. Earth itself remembered. And Earth, in its silent, stubborn defiance, was beginning to tell humanity's story not with words, but with echoes, echoes that were slowly, inexorably, beginning to penetrate the impenetrable armor of Xylosian logic. The stage was set, not for a battle of fleets, but for a war of memory, a clash between the cold void of erasure and the vibrant, unyielding spirit of a planet that refused to forget. The Xylosian occupation of Earth solidified into a grim reality. Orbital bombardments transitioned into ground deployments. Massive, spider-like Xylosian walkers, their legs thrumming with silent power, stomped across the devastated landscapes, performing what they termed cleanup operations. Their goal was to scour the planet, not just for surviving humans, but for any trace of human civilization that might have escaped the initial orbital cleansing. This included any hidden data banks, any subterranean archives, any art hidden away in vaults. To the Xylosians, a blank slate was the only canvas worthy of their new galactic order. Meanwhile, humanity had retreated, not in defeat, but into the deep, intricate networks of underground bunkers and tunnels that had been prepared for generations. These were not just shelters. They were strategic strongholds, supply depots, and most importantly, command centers for the nascent resistance. General Anya Sharma and Colonel Ben Davies now commanded from a vast, cavernous bunker deep beneath what was once the Amazon rainforest, a sprawling complex that hummed with quiet efficiency despite the crushing weight of the Xylosian occupation above. "Casualty reports are still coming in," Colonel Davies reported, his voice heavy with grief. "But initial estimates suggest losses in the billions. Their first strike was devastating, General." Anya closed her eyes for a moment, picturing the vibrant cities, the bustling lives, now reduced to ash. The pain was a dull ache in her chest, but she couldn't allow it to consume her. "And the good news, Colonel?" she asked, her voice steady. "The good news," Davies said, a faint smile touching his lips, "is that Project Echo is fully active. Its resonance signature is intensifying, and, General, the Xylosians are starting to notice, whether they admit it or not. Reports from resistance cells across the globe corroborated Davies' assessment. Xylosian forces, while ruthlessly efficient, were becoming increasingly distracted. Patrols would occasionally halt, their sensors blaring false positives. Ground troops reported inexplicable visual and auditory hallucinations. Some even claimed to hear faint music, to see fleeting images of human settlements superimposed over the ruins. The Xylosian command dismissed these as psychological warfare or malfunctioning equipment, but the sheer volume of such reports was growing too large to ignore. Commander Vorlog, usually unshakable, found himself grappling with a growing sense of irritation, bordering on something akin to frustration. His meticulously planned conquest was being marred by these persistent, illogical anomalies. "These echoes are becoming a nuisance, Kale," he grumbled, pacing the bridge of the harbinger of truth. "Our analysts still attribute them to residual electromagnetic interference, but the data is inconsistent." Kale, ever the diligent data specialist, had been delving deeper into the Earth's peculiar energy signatures. He'd even risked an unsanctioned study of some of the corrupted Xylosian sensor logs. What he found was baffling. It wasn't random interference. It was patterned. It had a coherence. "Commander," Kyle began cautiously, "there is a rhythmic pulse to these anomalies. A complex, organized sequence that our instruments are struggling to classify. It almost appears to be information." Vorlag stopped pacing, his multifaceted eyes narrowing. "Information? From a planet?" "That is illogical, Kale. A planet is an inert mass. It does not store or transmit data in a coherent fashion, certainly not in a way that would interact with our advanced systems." "Perhaps not in a way we understand," Kale countered, pushing the boundaries of Xylosian protocol. "But consider this. Our systems are designed to process logical, ordered data. What if this information is not logical in our sense? What if it is experiential? Emotional?" Vorlag stared at Kale, a look of profound disbelief on his face. "You speak of human concepts, Kale. Emotions are a weakness, a chaotic jumble of impulses. They have no place in a system of information storage." He shook his head, dismissing the idea. "No, it is a psychological weapon. They are trying to sow dissent, to create fear. We will counteract it with logic and force." And so, the Xylosians intensified their efforts to cleanse Earth. They deployed massive sonic emitters, hoping to disrupt the planet's internal frequencies. They dug deep into the Earth, searching for the source of Project Echo, believing it to be a physical, tangible device. But Earth, in its vastness, offered no single point of origin. The echoes were everywhere, woven into the very fabric of the planet. Meanwhile, humanity watched and waited from below. Their resistance was not for now a direct military confrontation. It was a war of endurance, a war of information, and a war of spirit. "They're trying to dig us out, General," a young communications officer reported to Anya. "But their drills are hitting unexpected resistance. It's almost like the planet is fighting back." Anya smiled faintly. "It is. Project Echo wasn't just about storage. It was about integration. We didn't just dump data onto Earth. We wove it into the planet's natural processes. The very tectonics, the magma flows, the electromagnetic field. They are all part of the system now. They're trying to dig through a planetary memory bank." The Xylosian ground forces began to report more severe issues. Soldiers on patrol would suddenly freeze, staring blankly ahead, their comm units crackling with distorted images and sounds. One Xylosian unit, assigned to dismantle an ancient human monument, a simple statue of a child playing with a dog, found its demolition charges mysteriously failing to detonate. The Xylosian technicians, baffled, declared the charges faulty. But the unit commander, a grizzled veteran named Tharn, felt a strange, cold dread when he looked at the statue. It was as if the very stone emanated a silent defiance. Later, Tharn found himself humming a strange, unfamiliar tune, a simple, happy melody that echoed in his metallic skull. He couldn't place it, but it brought with it a fleeting, unsettling sense of something lost. These minor incidents began to snowball. Xylosian analysis systems, designed for efficiency, started to report critical errors when exposed to the Earth's resonance field. Starship navigation systems, particularly those operating in low orbit, would occasionally flicker, showing coordinates for ancient human cities or even, inexplicably, scenes from human history. A knight on horseback, a rocket launching, a family gathered around a fire. The Xylosian High Command initially dismissed these as enemy hacking attempts, but their internal security proved impregnable. The source, they begrudgingly concluded, was undeniably the planet itself. Vorlag, his patience wearing thin, finally conceded that the anomalies were not mere psychological warfare. He ordered Kale to dedicate a full research team to understanding Project Echo. "Find the source, Kale," he commanded, his voice tight with barely suppressed anger. "Find it and neutralize it. This planet is proving more resistant than anticipated." Kyle, now given official sanction, dove into the data with renewed vigor. He assembled a team of Xylosian xenolinguists and quantum physicists, usually reserved for deciphering ancient alien languages or theoretical physics. They began to unravel the complex patterns of the Earth's resonance. What they found was truly revolutionary and deeply disturbing to the Xylosian worldview. "Commander," Kale reported, his voice tinged with an awe he struggled to conceal, "the Earth is not simply broadcasting information. It is embodying it. The tectonic plates shift in patterns that mimic human speech. The magnetic field fluctuates in rhythms that correspond to human musical compositions. The very chemical composition of the oceans contains encoded genetic sequences, not just of humans, but of every species that ever lived on this planet." Vorlag listened, his crystalline face expressionless, but a ripple of something akin to unease flickered in his multifaceted eyes. "Are you suggesting," he said slowly, "that this planet is alive?" "Not in the biological sense that we understand it," Kyle clarified. "But it is a living, breathing archive. Every thought, every feeling, every moment of human history, from the first cave painting to their deepest scientific discoveries, is interwoven into the planetary matrix. It is a memory so vast, so comprehensive, that it defies our conventional understanding of data storage." The implications were staggering. The Xylosians had spent centuries perfecting the art of historical erasure. They had destroyed civilizations, wiped out entire species, confident that by destroying all physical records, they had truly wiped them from existence. But here, on this insignificant little blue planet, was a defiance of their core ideology. Humanity had found a way to become truly unforgettable. "This is unacceptable," Vorlag finally said, his voice a low growl. "It is an affront to the hegemony, to the very concept of historical purity. We must destroy it, utterly. We will shatter this planet if we must." But even as Vorlag spoke, a new wave of anomalous reports flooded the bridge. Xylosian engineers attempting to deploy a new generation of planetary drills suddenly found their control interfaces displaying ancient human blueprints for agricultural machinery. A Xylosian scout ship navigating a deep ocean trench found its sonar suddenly picking up the echoing sound of human laughter, followed by what seemed to be a lullaby. The psychological toll on the Xylosian forces began to mount. Their cold, logical minds, unaccustomed to such irrational phenomena, struggled to cope. Some soldiers began to exhibit signs of stress, even fear. They saw ghosts in the ruins, heard whispers in the wind, and were haunted by images of a vibrant, defiant humanity that refused to be silenced. The purity of their purpose, the cold logic of their mission, was being eroded by the sheer, unyielding force of human memory. Back in the subterranean command center, Anya Sharma received the latest intelligence reports. "Their forces are becoming disoriented, General," Colonel Davies reported, a rare smile gracing his lips. "Their psychological readiness is degrading. They're spending more resources on trying to understand Project Echo than on hunting us." Anya nodded, a fierce pride shining in her eyes. "This is exactly what we hoped for, Ben. They came here to erase us, to make us forget. But they underestimated our stubbornness, our ingenuity. And they utterly failed to understand the most fundamental truth about humanity. We leave a mark. Even when we're gone, the echo remains." She looked at the holographic display, now showing the bewildered Xylosian fleet, a predatory shadow now tinged with confusion. Now it's time for the next phase. It's time to remind them that the echoes aren't just memories. They're also warnings. The stage was set for the conflict to deepen, but it was no longer a straightforward military clash. It was a battle for the very nature of existence, a struggle between the cold certainty of erasure and the boundless, defiant power of memory. The Xylosians, who had sought to destroy humanity's past, were about to discover that some histories, particularly those written by Earth itself, refused to stay buried. The Xylosian command structure, once a bastion of unflinching logic and hierarchical precision, began to show cracks. Commander Vorlag, infuriated by the persistent anomalies, ordered a full-scale planetary siege. He deployed specialized Xylosian memory nullifiers, devices designed to emit counter-frequencies that would, in theory, disrupt Project Echo's resonance. But the Earth, in its vast, intricate wisdom, proved to be far more resilient than anticipated. The nullifiers, instead of silencing the echoes, often amplified them, creating paradoxical feedback loops that sent Xylosian sensor arrays into chaos. Meanwhile, Kale's research team was making increasingly disturbing discoveries. They had managed to isolate specific memory pockets within the Earth's resonance, localized areas where particular human histories were strongly imprinted. What they found within these pockets defied every Xylosian scientific principle. Commander, we have decoded a segment of the human genetic memory in what they called their Mariana Trench, Kyle reported, his voice a strained whisper. It contains not just biological data, but also emotional imprints. We are detecting patterns associated with joy, sorrow, love, and even a profound sense of sacrifice. He paused, struggling to articulate the inexplicable. It is as if the very DNA remembers these feelings. Vorlag slammed a crystalline fist on the console. This is absurd, Kale. Emotions are chemical reactions, not data structures. Your team is becoming contaminated by human irrationality. Focus on neutralizing this. Project Echo! But Kale, for the first time in his disciplined Xylosian life, felt a prickle of insubordination. He had seen the data. He had heard the faint whispers of human music embedded in the seismic readings. He had even, on occasion, felt a strange, inexplicable warmth when reviewing the images of human families, projected spontaneously onto his research console. He was beginning to understand that the humans were not just transmitting data. They were transmitting themselves. In their subterranean strongholds, humanity watched the Xylosians' escalating frustration with a grim satisfaction. General Anya Sharma, reviewing the intercepted Xylosian communications, saw the signs of their unraveling. They're trying to fight a ghost, Ben, she observed to Colonel Davies. And a ghost by its very nature is difficult to kill. Indeed, General, Davies replied. Our probes are picking up increased Xylosian stress levels. Their cohesion is degrading. They're starting to turn on each other, questioning orders, questioning the mission. This was humanity's true strategy, not to defeat the Xylosians in a head-on military conflict they couldn't win, but to undermine their core ideology. The Xylosians thrived on order, logic, and the absolute control of narrative. Project Echo was the antithesis of all of that. It was a cacophony of chaotic, beautiful, illogical human experience, broadcast directly into the unyielding logical framework of the Xylosian mind. The echoes began to manifest in increasingly personal ways for the Xylosian crew members. A Xylosian pilot, navigating through what was once a human national park, found his navigation console suddenly displaying a detailed map of a hiking trail, complete with projected images of human families enjoying nature. He saw a human child laughing, pointing at a bird. He felt a fleeting alien sensation, wonder. Another Xylosian technician, tasked with dismantling a human power generator, found himself humming a familiar yet inexplicable melody, a human lullaby. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had heard it before, perhaps in a dream, even though his species had no concept of lullabies. One of the most profound incidents occurred during a routine ground patrol. A squad of Xylosian soldiers was clearing a devastated area, searching for any remaining human resistance. As they moved through the rubble, their comm units suddenly flooded with a cacophony of human voices, not angry or fearful, but full of joy. Laughter, singing, children's excited shouts. Then a single clear image flashed across their visors, a human wedding. A man and a woman standing together, their faces radiant with a profound emotion the Xylosians had no designation for. The soldiers froze, their weapon systems momentarily offline, unable to reconcile the image with their mission of total annihilation. The squad leader, a seasoned veteran, found himself staring at the image, a strange, hollow ache in his chest. He had spent his entire life in service to the hegemony, erasing histories, purging emotions. But this image, so raw and powerful, bypassed his training, bypassed his logic, and touched something deep within him that he didn't even know existed. Vorlag, growing increasingly desperate, ordered the deployment of their ultimate weapon, the Chrono Eraser. This device, usually reserved for wiping entire stellar systems from existence, was designed to create temporal distortions that would, theoretically, not just destroy the physical planet, but also unravel its very timeline, ensuring that nothing that ever existed on it could be remembered. It was a final desperate act of galactic hubris, as the Chrono Eraser powered up, drawing immense energy from the Harbinger of Truth. A massive, visible pulse began to emanate from Earth. It wasn't just data now. It was a defiant, desperate cry. Project Echo, sensing the existential threat, began to amplify its transmissions, broadcasting the entirety of human history not just in fragmented echoes, but in a torrent of overwhelming sensory data. On the bridge of the Harbinger of Truth, Kale and his research team were frantically trying to analyze the unprecedented energy surge. "Commander!" Kale shouted over the blare of alarms. "The Earth is overloading! It's transmitting a full-spectrum historical data burst. It's projecting every moment of human existence simultaneously." Suddenly, the bridge of the Harbinger of Truth was bathed in a blinding cascade of images. Not on screens, but directly into the Xylosian minds. They saw the dawn of human civilization, the first fires, the invention of the wheel. They witnessed the building of pyramids, the forging of empires, the rise and fall of nations. They experienced the horror of wars, the agony of loss, the triumph of scientific discovery, the beauty of art, the solace of music. They saw humanity's flaws, its cruelty, its mistakes, but also its boundless capacity for compassion, for creation, for love. Vorlag, a creature of pure logic, reeled under the assault. He saw images of his own ancestors, proud Xylosian warriors, being remembered by a tiny blue planet, their own history intertwined with the stories of these primitive humans. He saw moments of human courage, of self-sacrifice, of individuals giving their lives for something greater than themselves. He saw a mother cradling her child, an old man laughing with his friends, a scientist making a breakthrough that would benefit millions. He felt for the first time in his existence the raw, unfiltered weight of another species' entire being. The sheer, vibrant chaos of humanity, so alien to his ordered mind, was overwhelming. His crystalline scales shimmered with unprecedented emotional overload. He saw his own species' attempts to erase this history as a futile, pathetic endeavor against such an unyielding force. He saw the Chrono Eraser not as a tool of cleansing, but as an act of cosmic vandalism, an attempt to silence a symphony that refused to be unheard. The Xylosian crew members, from the lowest technician to the highest officer, were experiencing the same deluge. Many collapsed, their minds unable to reconcile the sheer volume of information and emotion. Others simply stared, their multifaceted eyes wide with a dawning comprehension. They had sought to erase humanity from history, but humanity, through Project Echo, had etched itself into their very consciousness. Kale, despite the overwhelming sensory input, found a strange clarity. He looked at Vorlag, seeing not just his commander, but a being struggling with an existential crisis of unprecedented proportions. "Commander," Kyle said, his voice surprisingly calm amidst the chaos. "We cannot erase this. We cannot erase a planet's memory. We can only learn from it." The Chrono Eraser continued to power up, its energy readings spiking to dangerous levels. Its activation would not only destroy Earth, but would also likely have unpredictable and catastrophic temporal consequences for the surrounding star systems, perhaps even the harbinger of truth itself. The Xylosians, in their arrogance, had unleashed a force they could not control. Then, through the cacophony of images and emotions, a singular, powerful image emerged on the bridge of the harbinger of truth. Projected directly from Earth's core, the image of a human hand, reaching out in an act of peace. Not a threat, not a surrender, but an offering of connection. It was a stark contrast to the Xylosian ideology of dominance and erasure. Vorlag stared at the image, his mind reeling. All the logic, all the dogma of the hegemony crumbled in the face of this simple, profound gesture. He had come to destroy, to purify, to forget. But Earth had remembered, and in its remembering, it had shown him not weakness, but an unyielding strength. A resilience born not of force, but of spirit. His hand, trembling almost imperceptibly, moved towards the console. "Deactivate Chrono Eraser," Vorlag commanded, his voice strained, raw with a newly discovered emotion. Doubt. "Power down all offensive systems. Recall all ground forces. Initiate full fleet retreat." A collective gasp swept through the bridge. Kyle stared at his commander, a silent understanding passing between them. Vorlag had not just given an order. He had broken the core tenet of Xylosian existence. He had chosen not to erase, but to acknowledge. The Xylosian fleet, a formidable armada that had swept through the galaxy unchallenged, began its retreat. Not in defeat, but in a state of profound existential bewilderment. They had come to erase humanity, but humanity, through the very essence of its home world, had indelibly etched itself into their minds, their sensors, their very souls. The battle was far from over, but the Xylosians had learned a chilling truth. Some histories, especially those written by Earth itself, simply refused to be forgotten. The echoes had become a roar, and the Xylosians, for the first time, were listening. The retreat of the Xylosian fleet was not a simple strategic withdrawal. It was a chaotic exodus. Their ships, designed for swift, decisive conquest, struggled with internal system failures. Navigation systems glitched, displaying ancient human star charts instead of current coordinates. Communication channels crackled with snippets of human poetry and philosophical debates. The Xylosian soldiers, disoriented and psychologically scarred by the deluge of human memory, moved with a newfound hesitancy. Their cold, logical programming had been overwritten by a vibrant, illogical symphony of human experience. Commander Vorlag, though he had issued the retreat order, was not immune to the psychic assault. He sequestered himself in his personal chambers, grappling with the seismic shift in his understanding of the galaxy. He, who had championed historical erasure, now found himself haunted by the very history he had sought to destroy. Images of human triumphs and tragedies flickered behind his eyes, an endless, vivid tapestry of a species he had once deemed insignificant. He saw their resilience in the face of adversity, their boundless creativity, their capacity for both profound cruelty and profound love. These were not mere data points. They were experiences imprinted directly onto his consciousness. Kale, however, saw a different path. He had witnessed the full force of Project Echo, and rather than breaking him, it had awakened something within him. He began to pore over the corrupted data, no longer viewing it as a malfunction, but as a new form of communication. He studied the human love he had once dismissed as a weakness, now seeing it as a powerful, unifying force. He recognized the patterns of human sacrifice as a profound commitment to something larger than the individual. He began to understand that humanity's strength lay not in its military might, but in its boundless, chaotic, and beautiful spirit. In the subterranean command center, General Anya Sharma received the reports of the Xylosian withdrawal with cautious optimism. "They're falling back, but they're not defeated," she warned her officers. "This isn't surrender. It's confusion. We've cracked their logic, but we haven't broken their will entirely." "Yet," Colonel Davies nodded. "Indeed. Their long-range scans indicate they're attempting to re-establish a defensive perimeter outside the Sol system. They're regrouping, General. They're trying to make sense of what just happened. And that's our window, Anya declared, her eyes glinting with fierce determination. They now know that erasing us physically isn't enough. They know that Earth remembers. But they don't yet understand that we remember too, and that our memory isn't just passive. It's active. It's a living, breathing force. The next phase of humanity's audacious plan, codenamed Project Genesis, was even more daring than Project Echo. If Project Echo was about remembering, Project Genesis was about rebuilding, not just physically, but spiritually. While the Xylosians were reeling from the planetary memory overload, humanity was preparing to show them that their spirit of creation was as powerful as their spirit of endurance. Project Genesis involved the activation of hundreds of hidden, self-sustaining biodomes scattered across Earth's devastated surface. These biodomes, built with advanced terraforming technology, had been nurturing genetically diverse seed banks, animal embryos, and even cryogenically preserved human cultural artifacts. They were tiny, resilient pockets of life, waiting for the signal to re-emerge. As the Xylosian fleet regrouped at the edge of the Sol system, still struggling with the residual effects of Project Echo, a new, astonishing phenomenon occurred on Earth. From the ravaged surface, tiny pinpricks of light began to appear, growing rapidly into domes of vibrant green. Forests began to sprout, rivers began to flow, and the sounds of life, birds chirping, insects humming, even the distant cries of animals, began to rise from the silence. It was a miracle of regeneration, a defiant bloom of life from the ashes of destruction. The Xylosian long-range sensors, still attempting to process the incomprehensible chaos of Earth's memory, suddenly registered these new energy signatures. "Commander!" A Xylosian technician reported to Vorlag, who had reluctantly returned to the bridge. "Massive biological growth patterns detected on Earth's surface. Rapid terraforming in progress. It's impossible. The planet was cleansed." Vorlag stared at the flickering holographic image of Earth, now dotted with these impossible oases of life. He saw not just the rapid growth, but the intricate design, the undeniable intent behind it. He saw the human spirit of creation, manifesting physically before his very eyes. It was as if humanity, having shown him its memory, was now showing him its boundless capacity for renewal. Kyle, observing the same phenomenon, felt a surge of something akin to admiration. "Commander," he said, "they are not just resisting. They are rebuilding. They are demonstrating a capacity for restoration that defies our understanding of natural processes. It is a testament to their will to survive." But Vorlag's Xylosian instincts, honed over centuries of conquest, kicked in. "They are attempting to defy us, to re-establish their presence. Prepare the atmospheric incinerators. We will burn their new growth from the face of the planet." As the Xylosian ships prepared their devastating attack runs, something truly unprecedented happened. The echoes of Project Echo, which had previously manifested as fragmented data and emotional imprints, now coalesced into a powerful, unified message, broadcast directly into the Xylosian minds. It was not a message of defiance or anger. It was a story. The Xylosians, from Vorlag to the lowliest drone operator, found themselves immersed in a narrative of sacrifice. They witnessed the incredible efforts humanity had undertaken to preserve life, to store the genetic code of every species, to protect the fragile remnants of their civilization in the face of inevitable destruction. They saw the scientists, the engineers, the ordinary people who had dedicated their lives to Project Echo and Project Genesis, knowing they would likely not survive to see their efforts bear fruit. They saw the tears, the sweat, the unwavering belief in a future they might never inhabit. And then a new wave of echoes hit them, a powerful emotional crescendo. They saw the image of a young human woman, a scientist named Dr. Eris Thorne, standing at the heart of the primary Project Echo activation chamber long before the Xylosian arrival. She was making a final recording, her face serene, even joyful. "If you are hearing this," her voice resonated directly into the Xylosian minds, clear and full of warmth, "it means we have fallen. But it also means that you, whoever you are listening. We leave you not with a weapon, but with a legacy. We leave you with our story. May it serve not as a warning of our demise, but as an inspiration for your own future. Remember us, and remember that life in all its forms deserves to flourish. The Zalosians, particularly Vorlag, were utterly transfixed. This was not psychological warfare. This was a profound, selfless act of cosmic altruism. Humanity had not just stored its history, it had offered it as a gift, a final testament to its existence, a plea for understanding. The Zalosians, who lived by the brutal creed of survival of the fittest, were confronted with a species that chose, in its dying moments, to offer a message of hope. Vorlag's hand, poised to activate the incinerators, trembled violently. He saw the face of Dr. Eris Thorne, her eyes filled with a serenity that defied death. He saw the countless acts of anonymous sacrifice that had made Project Echo and Project Genesis possible. He saw his own people's history, a narrative of conquest and erasure, laid bare against the vibrant, life-affirming legacy of humanity. Then, a new voice echoed in his mind, clear and strong, cutting through the emotional maelstrom. It was Anya Sharma, broadcasting directly from the subterranean command center, using the enhanced capabilities of Project Echo. "Commander Vorlag," her voice resonated with an unwavering authority. "We are still here. We are not just memories. We are survivors. We are the architects of our own destiny and the guardians of life itself. You came to erase us, but you found that Earth remembers. And now you see that we rebuild. Your incinerators can burn our forests, but they cannot extinguish our spirit. Your weapons can destroy our bodies, but they cannot silence our echoes. We have offered you our history, our legacy, our very soul. What will you offer in return?" Vorlag stared at the image of the blossoming biodomes, then at the unwavering face of General Anya Sharma. He looked at Kale, who met his gaze with an expression of profound, quiet conviction. The choice was stark: continue the path of brutal erasure or acknowledge the impossible, the beautiful, the utterly alien power of humanity. He thought of Dr. Eris Thorne's serene face, her message of hope. He thought of the laughter of children he had seen in the echoes. He thought of the sacrifice. His hand slowly, deliberately, moved away from the incineration controls. "Halt all offensive operations!" Vorlag commanded, his voice hoarse, a new gravity in his tone. "Ceasefire. Lower shields. Prepare for diplomatic contact." A collective murmur of shock rippled through the Zalosian bridge. It was an unprecedented order. They had never negotiated with a species they deemed inferior. They had never halted a conquest mid-campaign. But the Echoes had done their work. They had not just confused the Zalosians, they had changed them. General Anya Sharma watched the Zalosian fleet, now static, their weapon ports silent. A slow, triumphant smile spread across her face. "They're listening," she whispered. Earth remembered, and humanity, through its courage and its boundless spirit, has finally made them hear. The climax was not a grand battle, but a profound realization, a sacrifice of ego, a twist of fate, and the dawning of an impossible understanding. The Zalosians, who had tried to erase humanity from history, now stood on the precipice of acknowledging that history and perhaps even becoming a part of it. The silence that descended upon the Sol system after Commander Vorlag's unprecedented order was heavier than any bombardment. It was a silence pregnant with disbelief, with dawning realization, and with the immense weight of shifting destinies. The Zalosian fleet, once a symbol of unyielding aggression, now hung motionless, their weapon systems disengaged, their shields lowered. It was a posture they had never adopted before, a monumental concession in the face of an enemy they had intended to wipe from existence. On the bridge of the Harbinger of Truth, Vorlag stood by the viewport, gazing at the vibrant green patches that now dotted Earth's scarred surface. He was no longer the arrogant purifier. He was a being wrestling with an existential crisis. The echoes of humanity, particularly the final message of Dr. Eris Thorne and the defiant broadcast from General Anya Sharma, had fundamentally altered his perception of reality. He had witnessed not just human history, but the profound human capacity for sacrifice, for hope, for a selflessness that was utterly alien to the Xylosian doctrine of calculated efficiency and absolute dominance. Kyle approached him, his posture deferential but with a newfound confidence. "Commander," he began, "their General Sharma is attempting to establish direct communications. What is your directive?" Vorlag turned, his multifaceted eyes meeting Kale's. There was a vulnerability in his gaze that Kale had never seen before. "Open a channel, Kyle," Vorlag commanded, his voice still hoarse, but with a flicker of something new, curiosity, "and project her image onto the main view screen. Let us see the face of this humanity." General Anya Sharma's image materialized on the Harbinger of Truth's main view screen. She stood in her command center, her face weary but resolute, her eyes radiating a quiet strength. Behind her, the holographic map of Earth showed the flourishing biodomes, a testament to humanity's indomitable spirit. "General Sharma," Vorlag began, his voice surprisingly steady. "I am Commander Vorlag of the Xylosian hegemony. Your actions and the unique properties of your planet have forced a re-evaluation of our mission parameters." Anya's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. "Commander Vorlag, we had hoped that Earth's memory and our enduring spirit would be persuasive. We offered you our history. We offered you our story. And now, we offer you an opportunity for dialogue, not conquest." Vorlag paused, processing her words. "Your history. It is unlike anything we have encountered. It is chaotic, illogical, and yet profoundly resilient. Your people's capacity for love and sacrifice defies our understanding. How can a species thrive with such inefficiencies?" Anya's smile broadened. "Commander, what you perceive as inefficiency, we see as strength. Our chaos is our creativity. Our illogical emotions fuel our compassion, our innovation, our drive to protect what we cherish. Our love is the bond that unites us, and our sacrifice is the ultimate expression of that bond. These are not weaknesses, Commander. They are the very essence of what makes us human." The conversation continued for hours, a cautious, probing exchange between two species with fundamentally different worldviews. Anya spoke of humanity's long journey from a tribal past to a star-faring civilization, of their mistakes and their triumphs, their art and their science, their wars and their peace. She spoke of the Stellar Accord, of their belief in cooperation and mutual respect among species. Vorlag, initially rigid, found himself listening with an intensity that surprised even himself. He saw glimpses of a galactic future that wasn't dominated by the Xylosian hegemony, but enriched by a diversity of life and experience. Kale, observing the exchange, found his own Xylosian logic starting to reconfigure itself. The concept of inefficiency being a strength was a paradigm shift. He began to understand that the Xylosian drive for purity and order had perhaps led them to overlook the very things that made existence vibrant and worthwhile. As the sun began to set over the horizon of Earth, casting long, golden shadows across the flourishing biodomes, Anya made a final, powerful offer. "Commander," she said, her voice resonant with sincerity, "we do not seek retribution for the destruction you have wrought. We seek understanding. We invite you and your people to witness the rebuilding of Earth, to learn from our history and perhaps to share your own. The galaxy is vast, Commander. There is room for all of us if we choose to make it so." Vorlag looked at the image of the resurgent Earth, then back at Anya Sharma's unwavering gaze. The Xylosian hegemony had built its empire on the erasure of history, on the absolute certainty of its own superiority. But humanity had shown him a different path, a path of remembrance, of resilience, and of an improbable, defiant hope. He finally spoke, his voice no longer hoarse but clear and strong, filled with a newfound respect. "General Sharma," Vorlag stated, "your offer is unexpected, but it is also compelling. The Xylosian hegemony has always sought to perfect the galactic order. Perhaps our methods have been incomplete." He turned to Kyle. "Prepare a diplomatic contingent. We will accept humanity's invitation. And Kale," he added, a faint, almost imperceptible tremor in his voice, "begin archiving all human historical data, every inefficiency, every emotion, every story. We have much to learn." Kale, for the first time in his life, felt a surge of genuine joy. "Yes, Commander," he replied, a profound sense of purpose in his tone. At once, the Xylosian fleet remained in orbit, but their purpose had irrevocably changed. The initial ground deployments were not for conquest, but for observation. Xylosian scientists, once tasked with purging human traces, now meticulously studied the biodomes, marveling at the resilience of life. Xylosian cultural specialists, once dedicated to erasing human art, now tentatively examined the fragmented remnants, trying to understand the emotional resonance within them. Over the ensuing months, a cautious, often challenging, but ultimately transformative dialogue began between humanity and the Xylosian hegemony. Xylosian delegations, led by Kale, ventured down to Earth, witnessing firsthand the painstaking process of rebuilding. They saw humans working together, their faces etched with grief for what was lost, but their spirits burning with hope for what could be. They saw the laughter of children playing in the newly established parks, the dedication of scientists nurturing new life, the quiet dignity of elders sharing stories of the past. The Xylosians, particularly those who had been exposed to the full force of Project Echo, found themselves subtly changing. Their logical minds, once impenetrable, now had tiny cracks, allowing in slivers of understanding for emotions they had long dismissed. They began to understand the human concept of home, not just as a planet, but as a feeling, a collective memory. They began to grasp the significance of art, not just as decoration, but as a powerful expression of the soul. Commander Vorlag, in his quiet moments, would often review the archived images of Dr. Eris Thorne. Her serene face, her message of hope in the face of annihilation, became a symbol for him, a testament to a species that refused to be silenced, even by the most powerful force in the galaxy. He began to question the very foundations of the Xylosian hegemony, its relentless pursuit of a sanitized, ordered galaxy. He wondered if, in their zeal to erase history, they had inadvertently erased beauty, diversity, and the very essence of what made life worth living. The emotional resolution was not immediate, nor was it a simple conversion. It was a slow, arduous process of re-education, of bridging an immense cultural chasm. But the seeds of change had been planted. The Xylosians, once the arrogant purifiers, had been humbled not by superior firepower, but by the undeniable, unyielding power of memory, of resilience, and of a species that, even in its darkest hour, chose to remember and to rebuild. Years later, the Sol system became a beacon of a new galactic understanding. The Xylosian hegemony, though still formidable, had fundamentally altered its approach. It no longer sought to erase history, but to understand it, to learn from it, to even, tentatively, contribute to it. The Stellar Accord, once a loose confederation, now included the Xylosians, albeit with many conditions and a long path of reconciliation ahead. Commander Vorlag, now known as Ambassador Vorlag, stood beside General Anya Sharma at a newly erected memorial on Earth. It was a simple structure, yet profound, dedicated to all the lives lost, and to the enduring spirit of humanity. The Xylosians had helped build it, their advanced technology used not for destruction, but for creation. "General," Vorlag said, his voice softer, less resonant than it once was, "we came to erase you. We tried to scrub your history from the stars." But Earth remembered, and in its remembering, it taught us a lesson more valuable than any conquest. He looked at the memorial, then at Anya. "You have shown us that true strength lies not in the power to destroy, but in the courage to remember and the boundless will to create." Anya placed a hand on his crystalline arm, a gesture of unexpected warmth that Vorlag years ago would have recoiled from. Now he simply accepted it. "We all have much to learn, Ambassador," she said, her gaze sweeping across the vibrant, reborn landscape of Earth. "The galaxy is a vast library, and every species, every world holds a unique story. The true wisdom lies in reading them all, not in burning the pages." The Xylosians had come to erase humanity from history, but Earth, in its silent, stubborn defiance, had remembered everything. And in that remembrance, humanity had not just survived. It had changed its conquerors, teaching them that some histories are simply too powerful to be forgotten, and some spirits, like that of humanity, are simply too strong to be extinguished. The echoes had become a symphony, and the Zalosians finally were ready to listen.